All right, the only other thing I need to do is tell you a little bit about the building that you came to hear about tonight. So I have a couple of quick pages. I've done some research. I'll do my best, and then I'll get out of the way and let these guys, no, actually, I'll let Debbie introduce this team. All right? First, let's talk about John Rich Foster. That was his name. We'll talk about his life and career very quickly. He was born in Vermont, and he ended up in the clothing business in Clinton. And at first, he had business partners in a couple of stores, but then he ended up buying them out. And pretty soon, he was the sole owner of clothing stores in Clinton, and then far beyond. In fact, he opened, I think, altogether 27 different stores, all part of the same New England clothing combination. That's what they called it. So you could almost say he was like the first chain store owner in America, one of the first, certainly. So he and his wife, his first wife, Delia, kind of interesting the way it came out, but he never really left Church Street. All right, when they first got married, they lived in the Clinton House Hotel, which is down on the corner of High and Church, where the Mediterranean food restaurant is, right there. The Clinton House was where Mark Twain visited, a very, very popular place, and that's where they first lived. Then they built the house across the street, which today is the Graymore, but at one time it was the most magnificent mansion ever, and that was their first real home. That was the Foster's house, 209 Church Street, right across the street. Then they moved up the street to the beautiful house on the corner, which is our today's Senior Citizen Center. And then after Foster's death, his second wife built another home about 2 or 3 doors up from our senior center today. And she lived on Church Street. So this span of 50-something years, they never left Church Street. So Foster was a very, very wealthy guy, obviously. But I'd say he had a very sad life altogether. He and Delia had 4 children, but only one of them, Richard, lived to adulthood. Harry was one of his sons. He lived till he was 6 years old. 2 more babies, a girl that was unnamed and a boy, Robbie, both died as infants. So they both ended up dying, the mother and father, in later life, obviously, of various diseases or whatever, but the newspaper said both of them died of melancholia, which is kind of a sadness and depression, that kind of thing, and certainly couldn't blame them for the kind of life they had. But he was very, very rich, but again, it shows you that money isn't everything. As to the building, the Fosters moved into the house in July of 1881, the home we're talking about right now. But only 6 years later, Delia, his wife, passed away. She was 51 years old, and her funeral was held in that house. 2 years later, Foster married his second wife, Catherine, but then he died about 8 years later. So his funeral was one of the largest in the town of Clinton, and it was also held in that house. By 1904, Catherine sold the house and moved to her new home just up the road, again on Church Street. The kind of the weird part of it all is the history books all say that Catherine is the one that sold the house to Dr. Bowers, who was looking for like a rest home or nursing home to have people live there. But we have some documents that show somebody by the name of Alban Burbank was the owner in between there for a short time. And we know nothing about him, and no history book mentions his name at all. And yet we have a document from online that shows him, shows Mrs. Foster signing the house over to this Alban. Bowers did end up with the house, and he assumed the mortgage. You ready for the mortgage? $7,500. And he's the one that turned it into the Clinton Home for Aged People. And like today, to live there, you had to turn over your assets to the organization. And once you did that, you could live there forever. And as Bowers said, to live and die in dignity. So the building itself, a little bit about the building, which hasn't changed all that much from the beauty it was in 1881. The front hallway is in black walnut. If you've never noticed, people don't use the front door anymore, but the front entrance, all black walnut. To the left is a double parlor, and that's all in mahogany. To the right is the library, which is all in cherry. And then behind the library is a dining room that has tiled floors. That's kind of the receptionist area now. And that's finished in oak. And a little glass room, of course, off of it was a conservatory. So, and the wood in the house was never varnished. It was oiled. That's how they did it. And many of the rooms had marble sinks. And the building has 6 fireplaces. And when it was built, it was a real showplace. It had electric lights. It had a burglar alarm. It had actually gas and hot and cold water, which not every house had at the time. Henry Morse of Fitchburg was the guy who built it, and he was very famous for construction. He built over 30 schools, 25 churches, 15 libraries, and hundreds of private homes. And the only other local building he ever built was the Doggett block on High Street. That's the one where First Concern is, near the alley there on High Street, near Aubuchon's. He built that. That's the only other home he ever built in Clinton. So the home we're talking about tonight was built as a scaled-down version of a Parisian chateau that Foster had seen and liked many, many years before. So as a retirement home, it had 20 separate rooms. Each resident had their own living space. The caretakers had an apartment too. It was a staff of about 15 or 20 people to take care of the elderly and the sick. But today, of course, it's still one of the finest examples of stick-style Victorian architecture anywhere in Massachusetts, really. So we had all heard stories about some of the weird things that were going on up there, and I don't mean senior citizens. And on her own, Deb Goodsell, the executive director, called this team in, so I'm going to have her introduce the team. Enjoy the evening. I was going to say don't forget to get some refreshments, but if you got up to get them, you'd lose your seat. That's the problem. Yeah.
I think we got a couple more people coming up.
Oh, come on in. Hi, good evening.
I'm not sure if you took the chairs.
I just wanted to introduce, there is a couple chairs. Oh, there, you're fine. You're good. So anyways, we, the building is rich in history. We've enjoyed being there as our senior center, and it's just breathtaking. It's a gorgeous building, but every once in a while, odd things would happen. So the staff, we had seen a Facebook posting for this Connecticut Paranormal Research Team. We said, hey, what do you do? So they says, let us come out and see what we find. So we said, come on over. So they came over and they spent the night at the center. No? What did they do? No. Oh. Sherry shaking her head, no. So they came out and they spent the evening. They brought all their equipment. The staff was there. And we do not know what the results are. Yeah, we don't know what their findings were, if anything, what happened. But we're very eager to see. And I'll turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
Oh no, I don't start these presentations.
I just want to dim the lights down a little bit.
I have the appropriate ambiance.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we weren't sure if we should set up the microphone or not.
Too late now.
I know. All right, so my name is Christine Peer. I'm actually the director of the Connecticut Paranormal Research Team. And that's only because I personally live in Connecticut. However, we do not just do investigations in Connecticut. We actually cover the entire East Coast from Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, New York, clear down to the Carolinas, and then Massachusetts. And then we actually travel as far out as Kentucky. So we cover a huge area. Wish a lot of our cases were local in town, but a lot of them are totally out of state. So I have been running this team now for 21 years, and I have been researching the paranormal for over 34 years. And what we're going to show you tonight is actually a lot of evidence that we've got, not only from the Senior Center, but we're actually going to show you actual the EVPs, which will explain that. So you're going to hear voices from the dead. You're going to see full body apparitions on video and in still photos, and the evidence that we caught here at the Senior Center. So this is actually some of the team. Not all of us could be here tonight, but we do have a wide variety of team members. And I will let Dan get into...
Which we didn't introduce
Which you
ourselves
should
yet.
get.
No, I know I should.
Christine introduced herself.
Okay. So,
Got it.
my name is Dan Peer. I've been on the team since 2012, 2013 officially. I'm the equipment tech. I'm that guy behind every camera, every bolt, every loose end, and every camera that's not working. Thank you very much. I know. We tech guys don't get so much support. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll see you guys next week. So,
You
we
can
were very-
tell who became friends really quick on this.
We gotta stick together.
I did. So we have a very diverse background on this team. We really cherish that. And the reason is I mean, we have HR, we got clergymen, we've got audio and visual, Dave. We've got insurance, we got, how do I say it again? Animal DMV?
It's,
Doctor of Veterinary Medicine.
Thank
there
you.
you go.
Kelsey, who's a current student, and then we got a retired journalist on the team as well that just came on. All this background makes a lot of sense when you see the team as a whole, and especially if you get to work with us. Working with us is kind of an interesting thing. Let's just get into that. The reason is because we actually have people that don't believe on our team. We kind of look at it from a very technical aspect. We have believers, we have people that are interested in the field, and we have people that actually want to experience stuff. So if they are going to believe something, they want to be able to experience it themselves. Those that do get to do that and get to actually see full body apparitions or actually hear disembodied voices themselves, they're quickly turned, obviously. So when it comes to it, as you can see, our team is very diverse, and that's what allows us to really up the ante, especially when it comes to reviewing evidence. You know, not everybody's a believer, therefore not everybody's going to think the same way, and everybody's going to come to their own conclusions, which allows us to really get deep into evidence review. It allows us to come here confidently with our evidence and show you guys tonight.
All right, so I'm Kim Shalaki. I'm an investigator on the team. I've been with the team for about, 6-7 years now. I started off, I'm an occupational therapy assistant. I work a lot with adults, and right now primarily with children. I work in the school system. So Christine and I had met, and by chance, you know, she became to trust me. We became really good friends, and then I ended up on this team, which has been absolutely amazing. And like Dan says, we do have quite a diverse, and it really makes for some really great conversations. So there's two types of hauntings, all right? So the first one we're going to talk about is residual. So residual is kind of like something that's played over and over again. It's not intelligent, it's not a haunting or anything that you can communicate with. There's a belief that buildings or areas can absorb that energy, where it can be something that was really happy that happened, or something very tragic or sad. Those memories kind of stay, almost like a tape recorder that just kind of plays over and over again. So like for an example, there was a woman that we used to work with out in our area, out in Moosa, Connecticut, and every Thanksgiving, there would be this little old lady who would come in with an apron, just doing this with her hands, just peeking around the corner while she was making Thanksgiving dinner for her family. This is the only time she ever saw her. There was no communication with her. And it was the same exact thing every time. It was just that playback. So the other type is intelligent haunting. Those are the hauntings that really kind of get us going and trying to communicate. So we will use flashlights, we'll use tape recorders to try to get EVPs. We'll use our video cameras, anything, and we use some of our equipment, which Dan will get into further. Those different ways, we try to give these spirits or entities a way to communicate, because to people who have passed, there are loved ones who are just now on the other side who can't really communicate like we're communicating now. So we give them that platform so that way if there's a message or something they want to come across and tell us for ourselves or for somebody else, that's what we try to do.
So what we'll do is we're going to get into the equipment, and I promise not to bore you all. I really do. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the two types of equipment we have. We have audio and we have visual. Audio-wise, as you know, standard voice recorders, handhelds, you guys might use it in meetings, you might use it in classes. Just standard ways that we can actually record ourselves asking questions, listen back, and have vocal responses. We also use these particular types that actually we can live listen to. So it actually saves us the time of actually having to listen to it later, because we're actually able to hear it in current time. We also have the DVR system that, as you can see, it captures through the video cameras. We have infrared. We got what they call full spectrum, allows you to see the most aspect of UV light and all possible light. We also use digital voice recorders, which I already talked about. That's why I'm at digital cameras. And we use sensors and meters equipment. These are types of equipment we like to use together as a whole. What we want to do is we don't just use one piece of equipment, we use multiple at a time to be able to justify what we're seeing, what we're interacting with. So we've got the standard K2 meter, as everybody's seen, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, and so on and so forth. They all use these equipment. We also have, which some of you may have seen as well, what we call Raggedy Ann. And Raggedy Ann actually has that K2 meter built into it. The reason why we use that is because if there's a location that has a child spirit is not going to want to interact with a guy in a beard and holding a flashing light. All right, we put that in front of the camera, and we either ask questions and let the spirit interact with the doll, or we set it in front of the camera, and then we'll actually set a recorder next to it asking questions, and then another recorder, obviously, recording the session. You don't have to be in a location, you don't have to be physically asking a question in order to get EVPs. It is possible to record yourself asking questions, putting that recorder into a room, and then having another recorder record what's going on or any responses. There's also the Mel meters. We call these multimeters. The reason is because no longer do we have to carry 3 or 4 types of equipment. They actually have these 4 types of equipment built in. They have the K2 meter, they've got a digital thermometer, and in this case, also a digital EMF display for electromagnetic frequencies. And then we've got, which everybody I'm sure played around with in high school or college, little laser pens, or with cats and dogs, because that's fun. The laser grid is actually really interesting. You can use it in many different ways. A lot of times we use it pointing down the hallway, and that way allows us to see the types of motion that's going on with the hallway. If there's any spirit that goes in front of it, a human being's, when the laser grid hits human beings, you'll see the dots on the person's hand. But when a spirit walks in front of the laser beam, they actually absorb that light. So they'll actually turn into what looks like a black mass coming out of, say, the hallway. That's just one example to it. Unfortunately, we don't have ours here today where we can give a quick demonstration. But we use these types of equipment, like I said, all together, whether it be meters, audio, visual, recordings. You're going to see a lot of the videos tonight with many different types of equipment in them. And we use that to justify each. We just make sure that every bit of our equipment is either calibrated right, working correctly. And then if multiple meters go off, or we have multiple types of devices, it allows us to say, hey, you know what, you've been playing with this device, can you make this device work? And then it's a command question. So, and then we run into our experimental devices. These devices have been out in the industry for a while. They were made specifically for paranormal investigating. The Ovilus, what it does is that it registers EMF fields around it, and based on those EMF fields, it has numbers related to words. So if a number comes back as 6 in the device, 6 could be, cat, it'll respond and actually verbally say cat. The SB7 ghost box, I'm sure we've all seen that on the television shows, that runs through the white noise, and the communication-wise through that is that they can communicate through either the white noise through the device or the actual energy that's coming off the speaker itself. Then we have the electromagnetic generators, which many of them call the EM pumps on television. And what that does is that actually develops and puts out an EMF field within a location. And the theory behind that is that spirits can use that energy, absorb it, and be able to either manifest or move around objects or use our equipment to interact with us. The last one is after we'll actually we can show an example if anybody's interested, is our Connect system. We actually have a mobile SLS camera, static light sensor camera they call it. And what that does is that it actually puts out an infrared laser grid, and it actually registers the structure of a human body. So you'll actually see, just like that image, you'll actually see tonight evidence of that from different locations. So now that I have said my deal, go ahead, Kim. I kept it under 20 minutes.
You did, and I didn't have to go at all. So when we go into a location, we obviously believe everything that you're telling us. You're experiencing it. We're coming in to see what might be causing that. We're not looking to disprove anything. What we're looking to do is to find if it can possibly be debunked, and what that is where we can replicate what you're experiencing, whether it be the sight, the sound, the smell, whatever. And then it's like that extra little percentage that we cannot explain. So different things, so like houses. Who lives in an older house? So with older houses, you have a lot of those sounds with, changes in humidity, changes in the weather. You've got the wood creaking, the house settling. So sometimes to someone who's not familiar with that, it can sound like footsteps going down the hall. It can sound like, doors might open and close just because the wood swells. So, it's things like that that we actually look for. We try to see if it's paranormal. We look at the temperature. We look at humidity. We look at a whole range of things. And that's one of the things, that's why this equipment is so important to us. Even like shadow figures seen in the room. A lot of times, it could be a car going down that you've just never noticed before. Light plays, whether, with the rain, there's different things that we don't normally notice on a day-to-day. And then we'll be like in the midst of something, all of a sudden, it'll look like a shadow figure going by, and it could be just a car going by. So we'll replicate a lot of things. We'll do all sorts of experiments to see if we can recreate what you're seeing.
So we're actually going to talk about debunking. There we go. So this is a case that we had in Madison, Connecticut. All right, and a bed, young girl, a stove. None of it makes sense, right? Well, we got a phone call. And what ended up happening is this young girl was laying at her bed at night, and she was experiencing seizures, the feeling of being watched, and sleep paralysis. Anybody who hears that or has ever seen a horror movie or a ghost-related show, instantly thinks paranormal. something's paranormal, all right? And, you know, it's not wrong to think that way. You know, be open to all aspects. What ends up happening is that we actually came into this house and we were doing our sweeps. We had our meters, we were looking all over the place, looking up and down, seeing if there was any high EMF levels or anything. And what we found out is that at the head of her bed, there was a large amount of EMF. And we were sitting there wondering why. There's no electrical, there's no nothing. There was no electrical on her side in her room. What we found out is when we went into the kitchen, that exact stove up in the center had a clock dial to it. That clock dial was putting off a large amount of EMF. So what we ended up doing was we came to the conclusion it was a possibility of a high exposure to EMF. What we ended up suggesting was, since we didn't capture anything once we looked at all the evidence, and once we looked at all the video and audio, we couldn't come to any other conclusion. We asked them if they could possibly take the bed, move it to another section of her bedroom, far from that wall. What ended up happening is, within a week, we got a phone call. She no longer was having seizures. She was no longer had that weird feeling while she was in bed, and she no longer was having sleep paralysis. So, like we say, we're into debunking, not disproving. We're into trying to replicate the situation and find the solutions. And again, the solution may not be paranormal all the time. Did you want to talk about this one?
You're on a roll.
Oh.
You're doing good.
So this one was the same exact situation, just with an older gentleman. The older gentleman lived in an apartment, all right? He had, you know, tingling sensations across his body. He felt like he was being held down. He was encountering hallucinations in his room. The thing is that he was on the second floor of this building. It was actually the building on the left. And he was on the second floor. The first floor had all the electrical underneath his apartment. So all that electric from all the apartments, all the stores and everything was housed just right under his apartment. All right? Believe it or not, the client's psychologist actually reached out to us. And that's where it was. He was out of ideas. They were prescribing this man tons of medication, and it didn't seem like anything was quite solving the solution. So when we went in there, we actually found that the EMF levels were way over where they should safely be. We are not electricians, all right? We can only show what we have. I just want to put that out there. This other situation was too, is that he also had, as you can see in the right corner, that's not the same building, just an example. He had cell phone antennas just right above him. So below him, he's got electrical. Right above him, floor up, he's got cell phone antennas. So what we did was we worked with them and we talked to the owner. They actually moved that man to another room as soon as it was able to be opened. Many of his symptoms went away at that point in time. From what we know now, that building no longer has cell phone antennas on it. We don't know why. We'd like to say, hey, it was all us, but we really don't know. But the nice thing is that man was no longer suffering from these large symptoms. He actually carries a K2 meter with him everywhere he goes now. So when he goes into a bar or restaurant, if it's a high level, he just steps to the side or has to be sit down at a different location.
He's also no longer taking psychotic medications.
So who's ready for some evidence? Me. All right.
Back with another person? Okay, so this one here was actually taken at Greenwitty Cemetery in Burlington, Connecticut. We were actually working with the local police department in Burlington to investigate because they've had a lot of complaints of people seeing a woman walking the road carrying a lantern and then vanishing. And then the YMCA that was at the other end, there was a huge mass murder there several years later, and it has been closed. So while we were out there, the police officer that was standing next to me actually jumped, and he's like, "Did you just hear that?" And I said, "I didn't hear anything, and I'm standing right next to you." He said, "I just heard a woman scream in my ear." So I immediately looked at the cop, and I said, "I'm gonna take some photos." And I took 3 photos, and the cop didn't show up in any of the photos, but instead, I got this mass of ectoplasmic smoke, and it actually formed, I don't know if you could, the angle I'm at, I can't really see it too good, but you can see an eye socket, you can make out the bridge of the nose, and the mouth is actually open, and the smoke is coming out of its mouth. Once I showed that to the cop, he locked himself in his car and told me, literally said, "If you need me, knock on the window. I am not standing out here anymore." So I said, "Okay." Now this one here is actually, this one was rather interesting because this is a horse, it was an Arabian horse farm that had burned down to the ground in Lebanon, Connecticut, and all of the horses perished in the fire. So the entire farm obviously went into like a foreclosure, and it sat vacant for some years, and then somebody ended up picking it up, and they decided they were going to restore the building. So as you can see daylight. There's a lot of the boards are like charred, and it's missing. But what was interesting is the middle part of this is a cement aisleway. And when the construction people were in there pulling off old boards and replacing the boards, they would have all their tools in the middle of the aisleway. They're working on the walls, and they would hear horses' hooves coming down the aisleway, so they hurry up and they're reaching over to grab their equipment so that horses don't trample over their stuff, to turn around and realize there's no horses here on the property. So we ended up going there, and we actually caught this apparition of an Arabian horse that walked out of one of the stalls that was burnt. And you can actually see the head in the top with its neck coming down. I don't have a little pen leg. And its front legs bent out. And then you actually can see the bright orbs right in the center of it and right above it as it came out. This one here, we actually used this photo for the promotion of the White Noise movie that came out in 2004 with Michael Keaton. And we were out doing research in a cemetery, and I was trying to take a picture of that tombstone that you can see in that white mass, because it had a saying on it about how this child had passed away, and it had this 3-dimensional little lamb on it. And it was such a beautiful saying that I wanted to investigate it further and do some research on it. So I took a picture of it so I could research it when I got home, to find out that the picture didn't come out at all with the stone. Instead, I caught what appears to be an angel holding a child. So you can see the arm, the head at the top, there's a head in the middle, the arm bent, and he's like holding, like he's bent down, because you can see the thing. But what was really cool is the wings shaped in the back. And there's 2, one on each side. And I've never gotten another photo like this since then. Yes? I can't see. Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much. I'm dying, I'm sorry.
Should have just threw something at her.
Thank you for saying something. I would have felt really bad if you didn't.
So again, we were working with another police department, because we get a lot of cases from the states and police to help them, because obviously the cops see a lot of things and they want justification that they're not crazy. So this particular cemetery was being vandalized, and the police were trying to research it to get it to stop and catch who these people were that were constantly vandalizing the tombstones. And that one particular stone that's in the middle, somebody dumped red paint all over it. And in the fall of that year, a bunch of kids were drinking in the cemetery and got drunk, got in a fight. One of the kids got knocked out sitting in front of that tombstone. The lady's name was Sarah. and actually froze to death. And he died in that cemetery. So after that, when the police were spending several nights making sure that these kids weren't coming into the cemetery after that, we actually caught this, and this was actually, I wish I still had the video of it, but it was VHS videos, it was quite old, and I don't have a tape that plays it anymore. But this woman actually walked in front of me in the car. We saw her through the viewfinder, and you could see she had her left arm was cocked back a little bit. She actually had long hair, and you could see the space. The smaller photo, it's a little easier when you blow it up, it kind of depixelizes it a little. But she had a very tiny waistline. You can actually make out her bust line, and she just walked right past us and vanished right in thin air. And without looking through the camera, we could not see her with our own eyes. So we kind of think that that might have actually been Sarah, that was her tombstone that was vandalized. This particular one here, you'll see a smaller photo in the upper right-hand corner. This was taken at the Shanley Hotel, which is in Mackinac, New York, and we were filming with ghost detectives at the time. I was actually in the entrance to the Underground Railroad, and the room that is behind the guy that's sitting in the chair, they used to call that the body room. Because back in the early 1900s, they had an outbreak of tuberculosis in the town, and of course it was in the middle of winter and the cemetery was frozen solid, so this was the biggest building that could store that amount of bodies until the cemetery was able to be opened up and dug down so that they could bury these people. So there was 1,200 people piled into that room. Now, if you look, so Dave said, as he's videotaping, he's sitting in the chair, he actually said, take a photo, I hear somebody behind me. So when I took the photo, now that is about 6 feet from, he's like, I'd say like maybe a good 12, 18-inch step down. So that's like really high for this person to be behind him. But you can actually, if you look into the smaller picture, it was an image appeared, an apparition. The guy's got dirty blonde hair, his bangs are parted, and he's wearing thick, round glasses and with big ears. And you can even make out the pupils in his eyes. So after I saw this on the photo, I can't even talk tonight, I went into that room and there was nobody in there at all. So then we showed this picture to the owner of the hotel, and he was able to verify for us that there used to be a guy that did maintenance on the old coal furnaces that were in the basement, and his name was CJ, and he had a photo of him, and that is exactly what he looked like. He actually died from Agent Orange. So apparently he's still working at the hotel. Now this is a full body apparition that I caught at Eastern States Penitentiary. This was at the end of the night. It was raining and snowing, and if anybody's ever seen pictures of Eastern States Penitentiary or been there themselves, it's kind of shaped like a giant spider. There's like a big main section, and you've got all these wings that come off of it. The roof of these buildings were glass. So with the ice and the snow and the wind, it just corrupted all of our evidence. We couldn't do our EVPs, we couldn't do anything. We had to just literally block it out. So driving through a snowstorm in Pennsylvania, I was kind of upset that I was like, all right, I haven't been seen prove that this place is haunted. So we started breaking down the equipment, and I said, you know what, I'm going to take one last trip down cell block 12 and see if I can capture any pictures, because I have to go down there to get the camera anyway. So I went down there with just my camera and the viewfinder, and that's all I'm looking through. And I saw this guard walk out of the cell only through the camera. When I looked like this, he wasn't there. And then I looked back through and I was like, oh my God, nobody is going to believe me if you do not let me take this photo of you because I'm by myself. I'm like, please imprint yourself on my photo. I snapped the photo, and sure enough, he did. So after that, I just continued to watch him, and I'm yelling to him. I'm like, hello, hello, and I'm trying to see if maybe it was an intelligent type haunting. He never acknowledged my existence, which showed me that it was residual, because he didn't know that I was there. He never looked at me, never did anything. He just was doing his rounds. He walked out of that cell, went down the aisle, and he literally went cell to cell, looking in the cells, and he was holding his keys, and he had this weird little hat. Obviously, he's got a little beer belly. And then he vanished right in front of me in the middle of the aisle and turned into this giant ball of light. We have those pictures actually on the website of him disappearing. His actual picture is on the wall with the rest of his guards. He was one of the guards that was stabbed to death for a brawl that happened in cell block 12. So this particular set here, this is I think it's 5 different photos. So we were doing research at an old abandoned cemeteries, and we were going from one cemetery to another. And we were documenting them because they were abandoned locations that the towns weren't maintaining. So we're trying to document all the history on the stones, figure out what jurisdiction we were in so that we could go to the town and say, hey, we just found this place. We'd like to help clean it up and, make it presentable because this is worship ground. So as we were doing the first location, it was so overgrown that the grass was above my head. And you couldn't see. It was like a perfect scene of a horror movie. There was bats and trees. And what ended up happening is our whole team was split up and everybody's documenting with their, all the stones. And I felt something warm around my leg. Now, in the meantime, I've got a state police officer at the road keeping the public from interfering with what we're doing. And when I felt this warmth around my leg, I shined my flashlight down and I saw these little red glowing things looking at me. So I immediately freaked as I started shaking my leg and I realized that I have a rat on my leg and it's trying to go up my leg because I was warm. So I'm running through the cemetery to get to the car, and all of my team members thought I was being attacked by something demonic because I'm running and I'm flailing this thing and they see the shadow of this thing flopping on my leg, and I jump over the stone wall, so everybody's running and they're falling over stuff, and the cop proceeded to get this rat off of my leg, and I was bleeding because it just clawed right on. It was hanging on for dear life. So my mistake to this was we were communicating with spirits at that first location. From there, I never bound the spirits that I was communicating with to stay at that location. So what happened was the negative spirits that were there followed me to each location I went to and then came home with me. And it took me 2 weeks to get this thing out of my house. But as you will see in the photos, it actually manifests more and more to the point where, now you'll see, normally energy is just a ball of light. We call them orbs. And then what will happen is if there's enough energy, these orbs will pull together to form an energy rod. And then from there, if you have enough energy, they'll actually pull together to manifest into what it was when it was alive. So 5 different 35 millimeter rolls of film, this thing imprinted on my film. And of course I didn't know it until I dropped all the film off and went to pick the film up, and the lady's like, you've got to explain this stuff to me. But I did have my Olympus camera analyzed, and the film was sent back to Kodak to rule out that there was nothing defective with the film or with my camera, and they could not find any explanation as to what this was on my thing. So if you shift to the next photo, Dan, you'll actually see it's getting closer and closer. Now this thing is like right in my face because it's not letting me take anything. I was taking pictures of tombstones, and you can't even see tombstones in behind me. And each time, notice the pupils are actually changing and it's starting to show a face. And there the pupils actually dilated. You'll start to see smoke forming in the corner. I guess we don't have all 5 of them up there.
No.
But they are on the website if
Yeah,
you want
it
to
is
check it
on
out.
the website. But yeah, this thing was so strong that it actually used to turn on toys in my daughter's room that didn't have batteries in them. And it would make a beanbag doll that had a beanbag body with plastic feet and plastic hands, and it would stand up by itself. That doll got flying lessons out of second story window. You wanna do this?
You're on a roll.
Oh, go ahead. Or you
So-
Kim want to do it?
Oh, you're good.
This is why we all get along so well. So, now we're going to actually look at a few EVPs, all right? EVPs are electronic voice phenomenon. These are sounds that are printed onto our devices, our audio devices. Like we said, we can either be in the room, we can be asking questions live, vice versa. These are, what I like to say, voices of people that are not part of our team and people that are not part of the investigation. And that's what is really creepy about some of these. Some of these, you can actually tell the gender of the EVP and the spirit, and there may not be a person in that room of that same gender. So you could have Christine and Kim in a room asking questions, and a male voice will come through and imprint on the recorders. So you're going to actually hear a few of these. Shall we do visual?
Yeah. I don't know how loud that's going to be.
Loud enough to make Kim's ears bleed.
Even move. That happened upstairs. That happened upstairs in his bedroom.
Oh, this is the
And it
top.
also happened once. It happened several times upstairs. Now,
So did you guys hear a voice that just sounded completely not part of the conversation? It's a little easier when it's visual, right? Yeah. So for those who didn't quite hear it, watch this frequency right here. You can even see just a little bit of the bump right there, but right there actually shows the frequency input of this voice. I mean imprint of this voice.
even move.
That happened upstairs.
That happened upstairs in his bedroom.
Oh, this is
And
the
it
top.
also happened once. It happened several times upstairs. Now,
What do you think it's saying? We actually, it was kind of a toss-up. We were trying to figure out if she was saying, please play with me, or please pray for me. And with that particular case, it ended up as we were doing a residential investigation, we actually found a hidden well that was underneath the addition of a house. And there was a remains of a little girl that was found in that well that had been missing from the 70s. So we solved a missing child case. So it ended up turning into a police investigation after that. You caught that one, I heard. That actual case was using the SB7. So you hear the white noise clicking through. And what was with this one is it actually did not break the frequency in the SB7. It literally imprinted itself right onto the recorder that was right next to the SB7. So you never hear that break in the SB7 at all. It did get out when we were done.
later shifts. And we're like, no, absolutely not. You know, no, you yell and argue. I hate it. I don't want to yell or argue with it.
That one's actually, it's a little hard to hear, but there is a male voice that comes through and he whispers his name.
So you look right
Sounds
here.
like a P something.
I thought it was Bruce.
got the first one
I
right?
hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
It's actually Bobby.
I hate it.
And we played that back for the homeowner, and her uncle had passed away earlier that year, and his name was Bobby. So he was letting her know that he was still there.
He said, of course, that thing on the wall right there, that talisman. Now, let's see. Yeah, I know, it's 54, page 54.
Flash. It's so cool.
Now that one is right in the middle where you see all of that deep purplish area right in there. We had an object that moved across the table. And of course, sometimes you don't always have the camera in the right location at the right time to catch it. So we were trying to get the object to move again. And what ends up happening is this spirit it took them so much energy to move that object that it was straining its voice to let us know that it can't do it. Like it was trying to even let us know it can't do it. But if you play that...
He said, of course, that thing on the wall right there, that talisman. Now, let's see. Yeah, I know, it's 54, page 54.
Flash. It's so cool.
And nothing did happen the rest of the night on that one. Where are you? Okay.
Is that your saddle in the other room?
Now this one is really interesting because not only did we get him to respond to us, but you actually hear phantom footsteps.
Yeah.
This particular location it used to be a tack shop. So there was a subfloor, sort of made it look like an old barn floor above a cement floor. And that's been ripped out. So it was literally now just a cement floor. It's no longer a tack shop. And the saddle that we were referring to, the saddle used to be in the tack shop, and it used to be set up almost like a museum piece. It was all roped off and nobody was allowed to touch it. We did not know that, and we touched it. But what happened is the owner of that saddle, he used to train Western horses, and he donated one of his horses to John Wayne to film a Western movie. And John Wayne gave him the saddle that he rode the horse in for letting him use one of his horses in his movie, and he autographed it. And it's just sitting there in display. And the father that owned the saddle never wanted anybody to ever touch it. One of my team members had his hand on the saddle. He was just kind of like I am here with the piano, and something pushed his hand off the saddle. So that's why he was asking, was that your saddle in the other room? The phantom footsteps, we didn't know until we played this back for the homeowner. Her father had had a stroke, and he used to walk dragging one leg. So you hear one leg, drag, one leg, drag, and then you hear him say yes.
Is that your saddle in the other room?
Listen to footsteps. Like he literally came into the room and yeah, and then we realized afterwards we weren't supposed to touch it.
Sorry. I thought it was growling, that was just freaking creepy.
It was grass, probably gone.
That's my body, wild animals and humans, what that?
I don't think.
Did you catch where that one was?
No.
So a little background on this particular case. We ended up investigating a piece of property that was turned over to the state of Connecticut. They were going to turn this home into a home for sexually abused boys. So they had construction crews in there that needed to put in sprinkler systems, and they needed to make it up to state code to have all these kids living in this house. And The construction crews, nobody would stay to finish the job because they were having dishes thrown at them, they were having all kinds of stuff. Their tools would disappear after they just plugged it into the wall, they go to grab the tool, it's gone. So researching it, we found out that the house was turned over to the state by a woman. Her and her husband were professors at the University of Connecticut. She had wanted a divorce. She was having an affair. He didn't want the divorce, and he ended up blowing his brains out in the house in front of her, telling her that before this happened, that he was going to haunt her for the rest of his life and she'll never be able to get rid of him. So every night, before she would go to bed, he would do things in the house to the point where she literally left the house with the clothes on her back and threw the keys over to the state, and all her belongings are still in the property. So when we were able to catch this audio evidence, and then I tracked her down in Florida and I played it back for her, she was like, oh my God, I'm not crazy, that's him. He actually had a cleft palate, and he talked nasally through his nose because he had no roof of his mouth. So when you hear the EVP, you're going to hear that nasally voice come through, and he's threatening her.
So it was that was just freaking creepy.
It was probably wrong.
That's not bothering me, but wild animals and
Did you catch it?
I don't think.
He's actually saying, don't dare fall asleep. And that's what he would tell her every single night.
So it was just freaking creepy.
It was probably wrong.
That's not bothering me, but wild animals and
I don't think.
Turning this one down.
That was really blasphemous.
Yeah.
So this one was taken at Rolling Hills Insane Asylum in Bethany, New York. And there was 12 of us. The entire team was locked into this location for the night. And me and my case manager at the time decided to try to find where the electroshock therapy room was on this location. So we found it, and we were literally sitting on the bed. The bed was shackled to the wall, and there was like a medical table next to it with the actual electric machine with all the cables and everything attached to it. And it was so, I wanted to pick it up, but I knew it was from the 1800s. It felt like paper, just like touching it. And on the bed was shackles, and then there was this big device on the end of the bed, and we couldn't see. I just literally had, what is this one? I'll show you how bright this is, if it turns on. Oh, it's actually dead. We need batteries. It has a little red light on the end of it. So I was using that as a flashlight, and I had my recorder, and I had the Mel meter turned on, so it would let me know if I was in any type of danger of picking up high EMF. So when you hear this EVP, I'm actually sitting on the bed, and I'm feeling, because I can't see, it's pitch dark, and I'm feeling what this device is, and I realize it's got water faucet handles on the end of it, and it was an actual shower type tub that was at the foot of the bed where they would put their feet in while they were being strapped down and electrocuted. So as I'm sitting on the bed, you're going to hear all my equipment going off. And I'm totally I'm ignoring it because I was determined to figure out what this is. So I was disregarding all the alarms going off to let me know that I was in dangerous levels of EMF. And me and my case manager, who was a woman, were discussing this, and then you're going to hear a male voice come through crying and begging me to help him make it stop.
Just doesn't make any sense. Why is it facing backwards? It's a shower. Yeah.
Now, we never interacted with him. We never heard him say anything with our own ears. It was caught on the recorder. which I didn't hear it until the 9.5-hour drive back when I was almost pulling in my driveway. And I caught that actual voice of him saying, you could tell the sobbing, and he's saying, help me, please make it stop. We did go back last year, was it last year?
It's been 2 years.
Yeah, we went 2 years ago. And we went back to see if I could communicate with him again to kind of like help to cross him over, and he was already gone. He wasn't there anymore.
It just doesn't make any sense. Why is it facing backwards? It's a shower. Yeah?
Nice. Some of those I don't think you can really hear, do you?
This one.
The bottom one is the one I want to put.
You want to sit right at the bottom one?
Yeah, go right to the bottom
All
one.
right. Kim, do you want to explain this one?
Yeah, I would love to. So, this recording took place at a restaurant called Grill 37 in Pomfret, Connecticut. It was at the end of the night, and we were in the process of getting ready to break everything down. So this camera and recorder is actually set up at this table, numbered table 15, which is all the way on the other side of the building of where I was coming in. So just as I was entering this double doorway to go to the camera and to start breaking it down, this came up. Did you guys hear that? This still gives me chills. I'm a sucker for a kid. I mean, I work in the school system now, and my specialty is working with children. They called me at 10:30 at night. Well, I only live like 15 minutes from them, fortunately. They called me at 10:30 at night. Kim, you've got to hear this. Can we come over? So they came over, sitting in my kitchen. I was just brought to tears because the thought of this child saying, did anyone pick up what it said? Play it again. Where is my mommy? I want my mommy. And so it pulls at your heartstrings.
This was nearly missed.
Yeah.
This was one of those EVPs. As you can see, there's barely any difference between the background noise and here. And the only reason why we saw it was, I'm gonna plug them because it was amazing, Adobe Auditions. When we're able to see this frequency, that's what keyed me in that I needed to listen to this more. And when I saw that, I nearly kicked Christine out of bed and I called Kim. And said, we need to come over now.
So if this had not come through, like if it had just been even 2 minutes, like a minute to 2 minutes, we never would have caught that voice because I was on my way to break down this equipment.
So this is the Connect system. We're going to kind of go through the next few slides fairly quickly, but this is the handheld Connect system. This was actually, I think, what, less than 3 minutes after we actually turned it on for the first time?
Right.
And we ended up going downstairs in the basement of this location called the James House. If you look it up, New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Yes. Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And if you look up, you can actually do your own investigations there. They do them every weekend. And we were in the basement, and what I want you to do is I want you to pay attention to this chair and what happens in this chair. All right. The audio is really low. It's not so much the audio. We do ask you to do a few things, but pay attention to what happens when we run this clip.
Nice. Hello, hi, how are you?
Ever sit like that?
I'll wave like this. Can you wave back? Give me a wave. We're just saying hi. Put one arm up. Please?
But watch what happens next.
Can you wave to us? Look, like this. See my arm?
Crawls away.
Which one?
Now, some background there, that's actually Kim's husband. That was the first time he's ever encountered anything paranormal before.
He got the bug after that.
Yeah, he was like, when can we go back in? Can I use the equipment, please?
He was so impatient.
The weird thing about that is that not just that we captured that, I mean, that was amazing anyway, just because the legs were crossed. You know, it was sitting relaxed.
It was swinging its legs.
But when it came across and scurried, I'm going to say scurried away, I saw it on camera, Johnny actually felt the wind come by him. So that was very interesting with the Kinect system as well. We do have one other one, and I laugh at this one all the time because I'm actually going downstairs and talking about how my left is right, my right is left, looking at that screen, and how I'm going to actually smack my face into a wall. But it's about what happens after that.
This is all the first.
Getting a left and slam my face into a wall. Now you're going to notice, see that little indicator? That's a child's bed.
Yeah, right over, kind of going over here, over there by the bed.
Now watch this. I scan back over to the bed.
Yeah, just by the
It's laying down. And then as our buddy Eric comes into the room, he gets up and walks away.
Eric says he's sorry.
So that's another thing we've had with the Kinect system. So that again, that's experimental equipment, but I mean, that's crazy. You know, it actually went from a laying position to sitting to actually getting up and moving. So, visual experience, okay. This one we're gonna,
It's fun, you can skip that.
okay.
It's hard to, so you played it.
Yep. So we do want to take time to talk about this, seeing that this is what we're all here for. This is the main event. I'm going to say I was actually a little disappointed. We didn't get any EVPs, all right? That was the one thing that just disappointed me. But this alone was very interesting. We did a sensory deprivation experiment. And what we did is we placed individuals into far locations in the building. In this case, it was the third floor?
Yeah.
Third floor. Third floor and what I call the pool hall because the pool table's up there. And what we do is we have the person blindfolded and you have headphones on listening to the SB7, the white noise cycling through. All right, you have to have a lot of trust in your team members or someone's going to pick on you.
I heard a laugh over there.
So,
Where's David?
Yeah, where's David?
David!
David!
Back here.
All right. We're going to get to David in a moment.
I was tired, I didn't know what I was doing.
So what ends up happening is that individual is blindfolded, sensory completely blocked off, all they're listening is to the white noise. They're instructed to speak out any words or phrases they hear, all right, through the white noise. In the meantime, in another opposite side of the location, you have another individual asking questions, all right? The theory to this is that if the spirits are comfortable talking to an individual, they may be comfortable talking through that individual more so. So in this case, we have Christine asking questions in the main lobby area, and then I'm on the third floor, blindfolded, the headphones, as you can tell, I have a lot of trust in them for not torturing me. The only thing I gotta say is that we have a slight situation when we don't know how to end this experiment without somebody nearly getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
And you imagine, you're listening to white noise, your eyes are covered, and someone's doing, hey, we're done.
We don't do what she did.
Yeah.
You're gonna see.
So this one, I believe this is the one where you ask a question, I respond, but what's really interesting is she asks the next question and I respond. You'll get it.
Do you know how old you are?
Yeah.
Can you tell me your age?
2.
Thank you so much.
So with this, we have the DVR system down on the bottom, so Christine and Kim can actually hear my responses. I like doing these side by side because I don't know what they're saying. I have no clue. All I'm doing is I'm spitting out the words that I'm hearing through the white noise. And that one just made really a lot of sense to us. So this one was also very interesting because, as like I said, at the end of the experiment with me, my Christine comes up to tell me things are over. But before that happens, you're going to hear me respond, and then Christine just shocked.
Well, I thought I was going to be attacked.
So again, blindfolded, listening to white noise. I have no clue she's coming towards me.
And that little light next to him, that's our Raggedy Ann.
Stay there.
And that's Christine trying to balance. So Christine has no clue what to do right now.
No, because you told me to stay there. I was like, am I going to get hit? Is someone going to throw at me?
And again, I have no clue she's even there. So Christine gets brave, eventually.
Yeah, but I'm like trying to tiptoe.
She's trying to figure out how she's going to do this.
Should have used the post-it.
So she looks over,
I didn't even think of
she
that.
sees the doorway. And she was smart. She used the doorway as a protective device.
So we do have to figure out how to end these type of sessions.
Oh, that's great.
Maybe
We're
laugh.
going to put this as a blooper reel.
So, before we get to what I think is probably our most predominant capture of the night, I want to talk about what happened downstairs. It's not really in chronological order, but we had what we call a REM pod, and what it does is that it actually puts out its own little field of energy, and if anything breaks that field of energy, and it has to be like 4 inches, and you're going to hear me like, I go ecstatic when the equipment goes. So what ends up happening is we put this equipment down, and all night it was kind of going on and off. But when me and David sat down, it decided to just really play with us. So
Harry,
we start the sensory deprivation
we now have
session.
upstairs.
So you're going to hear me introducing the individual upstairs.
We would like you to speak through
And
the red closet went off.
the REM pod device is
No,
he absolutely did not go there.
Henry, are you here with us right now? If you are, can you get close to that device? It's not gonna hurt you. I would have been close to that device.
No. Oh, okay.
Sorry, I fast forward like 6 minutes. Yeah, total 12 minutes. I don't want you guys sitting here all night.
You move a lot.
I can answer.
You have to get.
And this is me explaining how close you need to get to it.
Yeah, right there.
No, that's just, he's just showing how close you have to get to make it do something, and it went off twice there.
But like, that is
Now,
like.
everybody else is in the command center, right here. So that's where all the laughter's going, because every time that thing went off, everybody's like,
Well, I think the whole time, Shane, right?
Derek.
Derek was upstairs on the 3rd floor.
Harry,
With
is that
me?
you?
Oh, yeah, she
Yeah.
Yeah, both of us.
So, Derek's doing the sensory deprivation.
Oh, no.
Nothing is going on with him at all. All the interaction is going through the REM pod.
He said, holy crap.
Or one
My verbal skills go out the window later tonight.
Can you make that device go off again? Is that you, Henry? Henry, if that's you. Henry, you really like that, don't you?
Now, the weird thing is that later on during the session, Christine says, can you go upstairs and go play with the music box? And as soon as Christine said, can you go upstairs and play with the music box? No, the music box didn't go off, unfortunately. But the REM pod stopped going off. So next time you get to visit, say hello to Henry or Harry.
I'm down near the. There's no way.
Now, at the beginning of this
There's no way.
investigation,
You've got to be 4 inches.
when
from
we were
that.
there, setting all the equipment up, I actually heard it was in the back staircase. There's another staircase that goes up to a small room that's kind of like hidden in between rooms, I guess you would say. And I heard a woman actually say hello to me, clear as day, like hello, and it came from that stairway. I went in the stairway and I said hello, expecting to see one of the staff members from the senior center coming down the stairs to greet me. There was nobody there. So of course, we didn't have the audio or anything recording at the point, we were still setting up all the equipment. And then we also heard footsteps upstairs, was it the third floor?
floor.
When nobody was walking around.
Yeah, and also, go ahead.
I'm sorry, where is this again?
This is actually the Clinton Senior Center right up the road.
So up on the 3rd floor, everybody was downstairs at this point. So now I'm going through the building, I'm shutting off all the lights. Nothing is here, because this is blocking me. So same area, so by this room at the top of this back stairway, I go to actually, there's a fire door right there. It was opened about that much. And the light switch is right there.
It's going off.
If we had been recording, the reaction was hilarious because I jumped back about 5 feet. I go to shut off the light, and through the other, I'm getting chills talking about it. On the other side of that doorway, all I heard was like a really long breath. And I actually used some very colorful language because it just, it freaked me out. But unfortunately we didn't have, I swear I'm gonna have to start wearing a GoPro as we set up. Because we didn't have anything set up at that point, because otherwise that would have been like a great catch.
With both of you, before we walk into any location, I'm going to duct tape the recorder to you. Because it seems like that always happens to you.
Yeah,
I love
yep, I know.
So, what we're going to do here is, so, everybody here know David?
Say hi, David!
David's in the back, everybody. All right, he's a great sport, honestly. No, every single person that was with us that night was an absolute pleasure to be with.
This was the most fun we've ever had on an investigation, so thank you so much for having us.
Yes.
So we actually asked, we needed a volunteer to do this experiment, and we kind of looked at David because he was so into the tech stuff. He's like, I'll do it, I'll do it. I says, but you're gonna have to be up there by yourself, blindfolded. He's like, blindfolded? And I was like, yeah. So he did it, he was a trooper, and we're gonna play his experience, and then we're gonna let you actually tell the audience
So as a
What
side
happened to
note,
it?
we would never let anyone be a guinea pig without somebody there. So I was actually right in the emergency stairwell. So in case anything happened, we would never leave anybody by themselves.
And then even if so, Christine's able to get to him in 45 seconds. Which you guys will see what goes on. But like we said, we make sure everybody's safe. And honestly, if we thought anything malicious was gonna happen, we would have never allowed anybody else but our team members to do this. But David's a great sport. He's always been at the location, so we figured if he's used to them, they're used to him, and well, here we go. So again, the same situation. David has headphones, blinded.
Oh, I have to turn it up.
Up on the third floor.
Hold on.
Are you busy? Do you remember the man that's sitting up there in the chair?
Buddy? My buddy? My friend?
Are you the one that joked around with him and scared him that day when you threw the reacher downstairs?
Everybody knows old reachers where they're like 2 feet long and you grab like a cup out of your cabinet? That's what we're talking about.
Harry?
So Harry did it.
Now keep in mind, Harry was one of the 6-year-old children that died, that lived in that senior center house.
You guys know who Harry is?
No. Go with me.
So is you where? Where do you want to go?
Run.
Go with him and run. I actually don't go running.
She was.
Well, maybe. You still didn't say where you want me to go.
No. She was.
Where are you in the tub?
Oh. I'm here. On. Or what?
So the difference between my
Where
session
are you?
and David's session is the fact that we actually took this opportunity to put the Connect system on him. Unfortunately, we didn't capture anything. Go by him, next to
I can't
him,
come to you,
beside
you don't
him.
tell me where you are.
Morning? Tomorrow morning? Go.
Actually, it's mine. She's gonna do it. Is it time to leave? Is Kennedy with you?
Sitting so still.
Shall we fast forward to 12:30?
Yeah, this should be this thing, 'cause I don't think it says anything.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
That should be
I can.
Yeah, he was kind of at this point having a conversation with himself. We were trying to figure out our next step in the little area where the reception area was. Have we done it?
So I will say this, the audio is going to go louder in the next minute or so, and then it's going to go straight down. Just watch for it. I got no other words for this, Dave. And pay attention to what is being said on the left side of the screen.
What the hell was that? I mean, like, really frustrated with that.
Now look at Christine.
Yeah. Yeah, open the radiator, so alright, so.
There's Christine, she finally made it.
Alright, so.
I know, I switched off the battery, I think, my
Alright, so I was, wow, Alright, so I was kind of like, yeah, I don't remember, I mean, it's just like bits and pieces and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was like leaning forward, and so this is what, it was just like someone, I just felt, just like that. It was just like this, is just what it felt, just a very light. I felt it go from like just above, just a little so.
What? There you go.
So Dave, you need to take a bow. Good job. Excellent sport.
So
Dave,
it
I
was.
think you should come up here and actually say what happened to you.
I'm usually a little more coherent than that. I used to do a lot of public speaking in a past life, but you never know.
We did bleep out your bad words.
Yes. It was.
So you did not hear any of the questions that we asked of you?
Absolutely not. I had no. In fact, this quite frankly is the first time I'm actually hearing the question and my response to that. It's just like, it's kind of like, whoa, that's kind of weird. So I have to give folks that don't know, I have to give a little bit of background. So I had been working at the senior center for a couple of years as a dispatcher and also as the tech guy up there. Frequently I'm there, as tech guys are, late at night, off hours, things like that. I'm not superstitious. I don't really believe in this stuff, so I'm a tech guy, zeros and ones, okay? It's kind of illogical, all right? You know, I mean, but nonetheless, I have this little ritual when I'm there alone, after sunset. I stay on the first floor or the second floor. I don't go to the basement. On occasion, I need to go to the third floor because sometimes I store some of my equipment and stuff up there and I need to go up there. So my little ritual, if you will, is as I'm going up the staircase to the third floor, I will, it's going to sound so weird. Oh, I will announce myself. I said, hey guys, it's me coming up. I'll just out loud. I said, it's me, I'm coming up. I'm just going to get something from here. I need to get this wire, I need to get this clamp, or whatever. I just let them know where I'm going, what I'm doing, and this is every time I'm there after hours, just by myself. So people, if anyone was there, they think I'm crazy, but it's just kind of this ritual thing. So I guess we kind of formed some sort of bond there. So they talked about the grabby thing earlier. Okay, so one time I was just about to leave the center and I remembered something on the third floor I forgot. And it was in the wintertime, so it was dark early. I just kind of ran back up, not really thinking, running up the stairs, didn't announce it. I'm just going to grab it and come right back down again, okay? There was a bunch of some walkers and canes and one of these things that you grab, to get things off the shelf on the top landing of the emergency. Now, this thing was not precariously stuck next to the thing, it was not leaning up against something, it was just there with the other stuff. As I'm hitting the first landing, this thing comes, not flying, but it's like someone just almost kicked it down the stairs. It's like, what the? I remember looking at it as I was going by, it's like, this thing, like I said, was not precariously pitched up there, it was but next thing I know, it's coming down the stairs after me. That was the day I did not announce myself. I made it a point to announce myself every other time after that. Okay. So that's just kind of a little bit of the background. I kind of have, I guess, a friendship with these guys. With Harry. Because he says he's my friend and my buddy. So, yeah, I was up there and it was actually interesting because I felt very comfortable, very at ease. I didn't feel threatened or weird or anything like that. I was just listening to the sensory deprivation and saying whatever I heard. And I leaned forward at one point and well, as I was demonstrating to them, it's just as if somebody from the base of my skull, just maybe down a foot, just very lightly brushed my back, and that was when I jumped up and I'm ready to fight. I don't know what I'm gonna fight. It's like I'm ready to start punching. So I was like, and I could tell it was from that side, it was from the left side because I could just feel it. And yeah, and then again, being a logical person, so I'm working through this. My mind is replaying this over and over and over again for like the next month. It's like, okay, it was hot and humid. Did my t-shirt stick to me? No, it wasn't that. Was there well, there wasn't a fan, there wasn't a breeze. Did I brush again? No. I am just trying with everything I got to logically explain what in the world that was that I felt, and I just cannot get past the fact that it was somebody kind of giving me a little back rub there. So,
And it was on command.
Yeah, it sure was. Wow. Yeah, so that was my experience. So it was. Let me tell you, not a big believer in this. Not superstitious, but. Damn. That's all I can say.
For being a good sport, we're going to let you walk away with your own DVD, so you can relive this over and
Yes.
When you heard the words, were they clear? Did they?
No, they weren't like crystal clear. It was like you know, it was like, it's almost as if you're tuning across an FM radio quickly and you hear like bits of things. But I mean, they were clear enough that I could understand what they were saying. There was never any question about what it was. There's one point I think I was stumped, I couldn't quite make out what it was, but I do remember Friend and Buddy came through loud. I mean, that was just like so clear. And I had no idea that's what they were asking. I mean, I just no idea. I was trying to figure out, it's weird because when you're up there, you're trying to put it in context about why these seemingly random words you're hearing and you just repeat them. It's like friend, buddy, and then, I don't know.
Yeah,
It was just
because you
weird.
don't hear the question.
No, you don't hear the questions at all. They're just random words coming out. And then, again, when you see it side by side, it's like, wow.
And you're still not a believer?
Well, let's put it this way. Yeah, I do believe, yeah. There's definitely more than zeros and ones out there, I'll tell you that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, well, that was, let me tell you, more than interesting.
Everybody.